The first moments of this video will be blacked out to show my support and how my heart aches for the murder of George Floyd. I support Black Lives Matter and equality, and I want to do my part to raise awareness on excessive police violence, injustice, and racism, especially towards the Black community. I will use my voice to promote peace, love, and unity amongst all, regardless of the color of your skin, in a world that is lacking those qualities. In the description, I have links to petitions and donation pages where you can show your support as well. Thank you. Let me just use this little intro here to remind you that just because I make a video on a topic does not mean that I believe that that topic is going to come true or that that topic indicates what's going to come in the future. This is me making a video on a topic that I know is a very well discussed thing. Which is why, in general, I am talking about this, because to ignore this kind of idea and to not make a video about it is dismissing a highly controversial idea that is shared amongst the Montreal Canadiens fan base. In this video, we're going to be talking about Max Domi, and whether or not he is going to be a candidate of a trade anytime soon. Now, people are bringing up the ideas of Max Domi being traded pretty much because of two things. First off, his production, that's declined over the past 12 months. And secondly, B, it's his contract situation. Max Domi is currently an RFA who needs a contract extension. It should be noted he's not coming off of his entry-level deal like most of these RFAs that we've been seeing in the past year or two have been, but instead Max Domi is coming off of a $3.15 million contract as a 25-year-old center left-wing player in the NHL. Now, how exactly have things gotten to this point? Well, Max Domi is a very interesting showcase right here. First off, once the Montreal Canadiens play their play-in series against the Pittsburgh Penguins, we have no idea if Max Domi is actually going to play, and we'll get into that maybe in a video sometime a little bit later, but for the most part, Max Domi is a guy who, ever since stepping into the Montreal Canadiens organization in 2018, has been a very polarizing player. Controversies have established themselves as to whether or not Domi should be a center or a winger. He's played lots of time at both positions, and he was pretty good for an extended amount of time in 2018-19. In his first season with Montreal, he had 72 points in a full 82-game season. That is great. However, this past season, he dropped down to 44 points in 71 games. He had 44 assists last year, but this most previous season, he only had 44 points. So there's kind of an indication as to how the numbers have somewhat dropped. Now, people will get into the argument on whether or not Domi is good, whether he's bad, whether he makes the team better, etc., but we're not going to talk about that here. The main thing is Max Domi declined. Yeah, that happened. You can't say that it's not true because the numbers show otherwise. So, let's take a look at a few articles here. Let's pull up this Sportsnet one off-season trade candidate for each of the 31 NHL teams article. This was published all the way back in the middle of May by Rory Boylan. We've already made 2 videos off of the ideas presented in this article, talking about the Vancouver Canucks potentially trading Olli Juolevi and the Red Wings potentially trading Anthony Mantha. Let's scroll down to the Montreal Canadiens portion of this article because there are 31 different portions of this article. The Max Domi part says this. An RFA this offseason, Domi's production dipped dramatically this season, which could complicate arbitration. But he's still a valuable young center who would draw attention around the league. So why would the Habs even entertain this deal? Well, Nick Suzuki could soon push for the number 2 center role, while Jesperi Kotkaniemi is also likely to return to the NHL soon. Ryan Poehling is a center for the future as well. The fact is, Montreal has a number of promising forwards on the way up. It may be hard for a GM on the hot seat to trade a player like Domi ahead of a season he needs to get this team back to the playoffs, but asset management could be a factor that makes it palatable to move the 25-year-old Domi. So, what this article is presenting as its main argument for maybe trading Domi is the idea of other centers within the Canadiens center core and prospect pool stepping in to fill in those spots. Having Ryan Poehling come in as a third-line guy, Jesperi Kotkaniemi establishing himself a little bit later, while Nick Suzuki pushes for that 2C role, and we can assume that, I don't know, Philippe Deneau stays at the number 1 spot. This is an argument that discredits the idea of Max Domi potentially just being a winger straight up. Because, hey, Domi's played wing before and he hasn't been terrible at it. And even if you want to keep Domi at center, he's a guy who played third-line center for a good part of this year, already behind Nick Suzuki, and already behind Philippe Deneau too. So, whether or not Jesperi Kotkaniemi or Ryan Poehling develop into players within the next few months to kick Domi off of that third-line spot, it remains to be seen, but at the same time, there's already been a whole bunch of talk that I've seen amongst Habs fans on whether or not Jesperi Kotkaniemi should actually shift over to the wing because his playmaking style could potentially develop that way, but regardless, there are a few other articles that I wanted to take a look at here that go over the idea of a Max Domi trade. Take a look at this over here. This is from The Athletic. Murat Ates, and I really apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but he posted this article on The Athletic back on May 20th, 2020, talking about 16 candidates for the Winnipeg Jets second-line center vacancy. Now, this is a very interesting idea that brings in Max Domi here as well. Domi is the picture. Domi is included in the article along with 15 other centers that Ates believes could potentially fill a second-line center vacancy for the Jets. But it's very interesting to take a look at trading Domi to the Winnipeg Jets of all teams because, hey, his dad, Ty, played for the Jets. Domi is from Winnipeg because he was born there while his dad was playing there. It's not too difficult to understand. But if you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets line combinations on Daily Faceoff, they actually have Cody Eakin as their second-line guy. And I'm not going to say that I'm the biggest Jets fan in the world. I'm sure Canadian Zombie can definitely fill in a little bit on that. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I said that I thought that Cody Eakin was a legitimately good and solidified second-line center. And if you take a look at the top 6 that the Winnipeg Jets have, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Nikolai Ehlers, Patrick Laine, and then it goes Cody Eakin, there is definitely room to understand why a different second-line center could be necessary. Now, common question to you in the comments below, if it's Domi to Winnipeg, because this Athletic article goes into it, of course I'm not going to read it because that's paid for content, but it does entertain that idea. What would you like the Habs to receive in return for a Max Domi with the Winnipeg Jets? Remember, Domi is a 70-point caliber player who did just have a down year, and he is an RFA, so that decreases his value a little bit. But in a realistic trade scenario, what would you say Domi is worth from Manitoba? Now, going further into this video, one last little thing I wanted to talk about was Domi himself, talking about his quotes that he said to NHL.com's Dave Stubbs. All I can really tell you is that I want to be with Montreal. I want to be here. I love playing in Montreal. I love my teammates. I love this team. I love the city. My hope is to play here for a long time. That's never changed since the time I played my first game here. That's that. Then on the subject of contract negotiations, Domi says this, I understand there comes a point where your contract is up, negotiations and all that stuff. As of right now, there's just so much other stuff in the world going on that's just so much more important than my contract. I couldn't care less about an NHL contract right now. I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to stay safe and get ready for whenever things come back to somewhat normal. I'm making sure I'm staying in contact with my family and my family is staying safe. That's what means the most to me right now. So, those are the quotes from Domi himself. Obviously, every player, pretty much, aside from Artemi Panarin, pretty much, would say the same kind of thing if they were in the same circumstance. You know, I love the team I'm playing for, I would love to continue, but that's not up to me, that's up to the contract negotiators, the GMs, etc. So, obviously, hearing that is reassuring, but at the same time, it's no guarantee, because sometimes these players who say that end up going to other teams, cough cough, Radulov. But Domi is in a very interesting spot. Whether or not he does come back, whether or not he gets traded, that remains to be seen. But I can sit here and I can say I do understand the value of having a Domi on your team. This is a kind of player that will go in the playoffs and that can motivate the rest of your team to do better. There is very high value, not just on the score sheet, of having a player like Max Domi in your locker room, and I think any Habs fan watching the Canadiens for the past 2 seasons can agree with that as well. I think the volatile status of being an RFA alongside all these uncertainties with contract lengths and whether or not the Canadiens are going to play in the play-in series and win and whether or not Domi's actually going to be available there have all just combined into this idea that Domi can be traded, but I'd be lying if I said that I would predict on that, especially to the Jets. That would be weird. But hey, if it is Winnipeg, then hey, I want to see some of those prospects, eh? Christian Vesalainen's a guy who I think is a pretty good prospect. Same with Ville Heinola, drafted a little bit earlier last year. So those are just some spitballing ideas right here. Overall, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, comment down below what you think the Winnipeg Jets should give up for a Max Domi-like trade, and whether or not Domi should even be traded in general. But I hope you enjoyed this video. So that's 99, and bye.